Conversations With, a podcast series exploring the people and practices shaping the impact of private philanthropy to benefit communities across Africa. Conversations With is produced by the Africa Grantmakers Affinity Group, working to promote robust, effective, and responsive philanthropy and to build a network of informed, engaged, and connected funders. Visit the africagrantmakers.org website for program notes and to join our mailing list.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Niamani Mutima, and welcome to the Africa Grantmakers Affinity Group Conversation With series. Thank you for joining us. So today's session, Supporting Youth Activism Means Supporting Youth Activists, is the first in a three-part series exploring how philanthropy is supporting the next generation community across Africa. So I'm pleased to welcome Jonathan Gunthrop of SAT Africa Trust and youth activists Prudence Chavula and Teboho Mohloai. Both SAT and the activists work together in youth hubs. SAT launched youth hubs as part of their work engaging with youth-led and youth-driven activities, focusing primarily on sexual reproductive health, rights, and other related issues. So both Prudence and Teboho's work as activist leaders underscores the important message that young people have to draw the blueprints for their own future. So welcome, Jonathan, Prudence, and Teboho.
Thank you.
Thank you, Niaman.
So Jonathan, would you start us off by telling us a bit about the youth hubs and how it fits with the broader landscape of youth activism around sexual reproductive health and rights in Southern Africa? And then I'm going to turn it over to you to moderate the discussion with Prudence and Teboho.
Imani, thank you. And thank you to AGAG. I think that some people may remember possibly our last in-person meeting, in fact, where Flanny and I talked about some of the difficulties of funding young people, funding individuals, and how for a couple of years now, SAT's been grappling with how do you do it? There's not a huge organization, there's not due diligence, so how do you do it? We don't have the answers yet. But one of the ways that we've tried to do that is the youth hubs. So that sense that there are brilliant young people all over the place doing brilliant things, and it's very difficult to support them. So what SAT's done is we've set up youth hubs, and youth hubs are really, they're supposed to be places of youth activism, places to foster youth activism. They're places where young people have access to resources like the internet, which is huge, to computers, to mentors, to other young people, to set up teams and do work like that. And they really want to foster, up to this point, activism in health, SRHR, adolescent health, young people's health. But in fact, we're now being challenged to open that up in a sense. So there's some fabulous youth activism in this region on environment and climate change. There's social justice in other areas. There's gender equity activism. And people are saying to us, open them up. So that's what the youth hubs were set up to do. They were set up to be ways that when you struggle to fund an individual person, you can pool some resources in one place. And the people who come to that place then have access to those resources. Now, I mean, I think what we'll hear in the next short while and what we'll explore is, and they help in some ways, but they don't help in other ways. And so in other ways, the dilemma remains open. So let me just say we have two fabulous activists, one of whom we've worked with for a while and one of whom we haven't really worked with, but has come to our attention and we've featured recently. Prudence Chavula is in rural Malawi. Teboho is in Lesotho in Maseru. So Prudence and Teboho, you both come from very different spaces, but let's introduce you to people first. Teboho, who are you? Where do you come from?
Thank you very much, Jono. My name is Teboho Mohloai. I'm 31 years old. I am the third child of 5. I'm from Maseru, Lesotho, in the urban areas, very close to the city. And I have a diploma in adult education. I am my father's favorite, apparently, in the household. And I think I've been told that I'm patient. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Cool, thank you. Prudence, tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, thank you so much, Jonah. My name is Prudence Chavula. I'm the second born in a family of 4 children, and my parents are all teachers by profession. Yeah, so I grew up in a district called Mangochi, which is located in the southern region of Malawi, and that's actually where I'm based. I hold a bachelor's degree in public administration from the University of Malawi, and I'm passionate about positive community transformation as well as rural adults and girls and young women empowerment. Thank you.
Thank you both. So just one more step in the kind of who are you question. How did you come to activism? You know, we're not sure if great activists are made or born, but how did you come to activism? Teboho, come on, how did you first start doing activism?
Okay, so I think for me, it came from the family setting that I grew up in. I have a very, very big family. I was raised by mostly my grandmother and with all my cousins. And in our family, we help everybody. There's no stranger in our household or where I come from. So seeing my grandmother and my mother being able to help people, I remember at some point in our village, people thought that we come from a royal family because it was always busy. And seeing how my mother does not allow us to wear something for over 3 years, and sometimes we keep it in the wardrobe for longer than that. She's always telling us that, no, if you do not use it, there's somebody else who has a need for it. I think that is where my love for helping people and working with people started. And then I started volunteering with a very, very rural organization outside Maseru in 2012, where in order to get to the communities, we had to either ride on horseback or tractors. So that is, I think, where I started, and I grew in my activism from there.
Cool, thank you. Prudence, tell us about what was your first activism ever?
Okay, so I come from a district which has the highest rate of school dropout due to child marriages and teenage pregnancies in Malawi. And personally, I also survived gender-based violence at a very young age. So having experienced all that, I was motivated to set up an organization that would specifically fight against gender-based violence and advocate for young women empowerment.
Prudence, at what age? When did you start?
I started when I was only 17 years old. So I started volunteering with CAMFED, which is Campaign for Female Education, soon after sitting for my secondary school certificate. Yeah, so it is CAMFED that gave me a platform for exposure networking.
Thank you. What sort of support and from whom did you first get support for activism? So not like last year or whatever, but when you were first starting up, what was, the support could have been anything. It might have been encouragement from an uncle. It might have been $10 from somebody. It might have been, so what kind of support and from whom did you first get support for activism? So, Teboho?
Thanks, John. For me, it was my family. Like when I started volunteering, and like I mentioned, that the first organization that I volunteered with was way, way outside the city, and I had to have money for transport and lunch to get there. And as I grew also into volunteerism, it meant that in order for me to be at the youth center on the days where we had activities, I needed transport money. So my parents have always been very supportive to me in ensuring that at least I get there and get the information. And I think they were also more than that, because they also became the activists themselves. Every material that I would come back home with, they made sure that they share the information that they get from that. And yeah.
So, I mean, you're saying the first amounts of support, or the first kinds of support, were very small. Transport, lunch, but your family had some disposable income and was able to do that. Whereas recognizing in this region, many families don't have. And so people wouldn't have been able to take that extra step that you've taken. Thank you. That's interesting. Prudence, so what was the very first kind of support you ever got for your activism, and from who?
All right, thank you. Okay, so the first institution that really supported me was CAMFED, like I said, Comfort gave me a platform for networking, peer support, as well as exposure through its network of rural young women. So I joined the network soon after completing my second education, and through the network of rural young women, I was able to secure some small money from Comfort each and every money for implementation of various activities in my community. Yeah, so the support that I was getting from Comfort, my community started to notice me, and then from there on, I was being chosen to represent young people in my community in the various committees that were being set up.
Prudence, did you ever manage to get support from the community for that representation, or was it always from the organization?
So the community still does support me up to now.
Yeah. And what kinds of support, Prudence?
So, in each and every community, there are leaders that are chosen. And in the community where I come from, we are privileged that the second deputy speaker of parliament comes from that area. And she really helps me a lot when it comes to securing funding from organizations. For instance, I'm currently implementing a campaign which I'm calling Not Under My Watch, with funding from UN Women. And it is this second deputy speaker of parliament who helped me to secure the funding from UN Women. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. So you've really kind of taken us to the next segment, if you like, of what we want to talk about, which is Prudence. That featured you as a Friday activist, which is one of our series in the region featuring young people. So tell us about the work that you're doing now. Who are you reaching? How many are you reaching? What are you doing?
Okay, all right, fine. Okay, so I have an organization which I started in 2015. It's called Go Fund a Girl Child. So as an organization, we are basically there to create an enabling environment for adolescent girls and young women such that they're empowered to become powerful agents of socioeconomic development in the society. So we offer psychosocial support to DBV survivors, and we also have a bursary scheme that specifically targets girls who dropped out of school due to child marriages and teenage pregnancies. And we also offer comprehensive sexual education to both in and out of school adolescent girls and young women. Yeah.
So that's a wide range, that comprehensive sexuality education, bursaries, keeping girls in school, GBV, working with survivors, psychosocial support. All right, thank you. Teboho, you operate at very different levels. So you're operating at maybe a tiny bit the national level, but maybe more interestingly, the regional level. So do you want to tell us a bit about some of the work that you're doing?
Yes, Jono. So I work with AFRIAN. AFRIAN is Adolescents and Youth Network on Population and Development, and it works in 23 countries in East and Southern Africa. I joined AFRIAN in 2014. So what I think from then I've transitioned, like you said, more from a national to regional level. And I think that the work that we do currently is we provide access to young people and youth-led organizations in the different countries that we work in. And through that access, we try to amplify the voices of young people and the work that they do at grassroots. Access to decision-making platforms, yes, and opportunities for capacity building. And then from the amplification of the youth voices and the work that they do, we try to make sure that we influence policy decisions, development, and I think the most recent big thing that we were involved in is the development of the SRHR strategy 2019-2030. And from there, now we move on. After influencing, we move to implementation on the ground on the different laws and policies that we get involved in.
Don't skip over the strategy. It's a very big part of the future of SRHR in this region. So just tell us a bit about how activists played a role in that.
Thank you. Yes. So in the SRHR strategy, I think specifically this one, what was different and exciting as young people when we got involved as activists in the process was that for the first time, I think in SADC, we were not just observers, we were equal participants with the member states in the whole process. And we had a say in how the strategy is developed. And then in that process, we thought we needed to go beyond just sitting in that high-level process and bringing other young people who are not part of the process. And then we developed what we called a community of policy and practice with the support of SED and other civil society organizations that are members. So through the youth cluster, now what we do is beyond the strategy, and we try to look at SRHR broadly. And we regularly converse and engage in the work that we do at grassroots level as youth-led organizations to influence change. And the biggest thing I think that we were currently doing, and we launched just yesterday, is the Voices for CSE video, that we were trying to address the growing opposition, the growing and increasing opposition to comprehensive sexuality education in our region.
Cool stuff. Thank you. I'm going to keep rolling with you.
Okay.
So we've talked a bit about the first support you got, which was kind of when you bullied your family into supporting you. But moving on from that, what was the most useful support for increasing your impact as an activist over the last while?
So I laugh because this is one of the proudest things that I think and support that I've got in my entire work as a youth activist. I think it's through the SRHR strategy process when we started or initiated the Community of Policy and Practice, and SED gave me an opportunity to coordinate the youth cluster. And like I mentioned, the youth cluster has grown beyond just focusing on the SRHR strategy, but looking at SRHR in general and engaging young people beyond AFRIAN and SRHR. Now, this has also helped me get recognized and grow my influence in ensuring meaningful youth participation, engagement, and leadership. Because of the database and I think the trust that we've gathered and grown of young people and our partners, I am able to nominate and identify young people to continuously be engaged and meaningfully participate in high-level processes.
Thank you. Just try to categorize or summarize what that support was. What kind of support was it that made it useful?
The support that made it useful was I got paid to coordinate that youth cluster. For the first time in my life, I got a salary.
Okay, we'll come back to that as a very big issue. Prudence, if you think back over the support you've received, what would be possibly the most useful support you received? And who was that from?
All right. Okay. So first and foremost, I personally believe that knowledge is power. As such, I highly acknowledge and appreciate the capacity building support I've been getting over the years from Healthy Policy Plus, which is a USAID funded project in Malawi. Yeah, so Healthy Policy Plus has been capacitating me in as far as policy advocacy is concerned. And it is this capacity that enables me to tackle policy issues starting from the community up to the national level. Yeah, so to me, that's the highest level of support I've received from, in as far as my advocacy or activism work is concerned. I've also been able to secure funding from international organizations like UNFPA and UN Women for the implementation of some of my projects. So, yeah, I also appreciate that support.
Prudence, let's stick with you. So you, in the discussions leading up to this, you said you set up an organization partly because no one would fund you as an individual. So just say a bit about some of the challenges of setting that up and running an organization in order to receive funding?
Okay, so I thought of setting up an organization because I needed a platform, more like a formal platform for me to be able to access funding from various institutions and organizations. So the biggest challenge is when it comes to accessing funding is that there are stiff conditions that are attached to the funding opportunities, and we are only a youth organization. We are not that well established at the moment. So at times we are forced to compete with well-established organizations for funding opportunities. And at times, we are also partnered with well-established organizations when they are open calls. So the problem is that when the money comes, these well-established organizations have a bigger say when it comes to the management or the funds on the ground. And adding to that, I think most of the donors, they're still reluctant when it comes to supporting youth organizations. As such, they prefer direct implementation, or they're mostly interested in supporting short-term projects. And yet some of the issues that I'm trying to tackle are deeply rooted.
When you say they're mostly interested in supporting certain kinds of projects, can you categorize those projects? What sorts of projects?
Okay, so like I said, they are mostly interested in supporting short-term projects.
Teboho, again, a different level of working. Talk about some of the challenges of funding. Resourcing, not necessarily just funding, sorry.
Yes, Juno. I think adding to what Prudence has already said, it's a challenge. I think even for us as Afrian, still today, we are a big organization, but because we are not legally registered at regional level, that still poses a challenge to receive funding directly. And even some of the projects that we get involved in, Prudence has already alluded to. But I think the biggest challenge in resourcing is making sure that young people, we implement the activities that we want at grassroots level. It's not just about high-level meetings. For instance, right now, this issue that we are working on right now, recently that we launched yesterday, the Voices of CSE, we do not have the resources to go deeper at grassroots level to engage with communities. Yes, we are able to advocate at high level, but at grassroots level with communities and making sure that the leaders, the chiefs, the parents, that is still a challenge in finding resources to implement such activities and engage young people. Like Prudence mentioned, that knowledge is power. Without it, we are doomed, and we don't have access to resources to even at least have trainings to capacitate young people and even community leaders, because we come from these communities and they need to hear some of these issues from us, but gathering people is expensive. And so it's kind of difficult finding resources or even convening young people for anything at all. Right now, currently, we are working virtually. Everything has changed. We need smartphones. You cannot access Zoom with an old Nokia 3310. That means young people need resources. And like you mentioned before, not everyone is as lucky as me to have parents who can be bullied by their daughter to get a smartphone or a laptop, let alone access to internet. We still find challenges with everything that has moved to the virtual space. You talk about webinars, you talk about anything that is now virtual. When we ask for young people to get data, it's still a challenge. The world is not traveling. And you find some of these big organizations that want young people to participate in these virtual platforms. They would budget for travel and DSA, but now it's a challenge. It's difficult to give young people even $60 for them to participate. There are many surveys. I was laughing yesterday when one of the surveys came back and the response was very bad and poor. And now people are asking, where are the young people? Can you please reshare this? And then we go back to, with what data are they going to respond to the survey? And we hit rock bottom every time. And I think with changing trends, not only in the world of programming, but we also need to understand the world of young people and the realities that we live on the ground. And resourcing is very important, and we need to take it into consideration.
So it sounds like, ironically, or funnily enough, you have almost the same problem as Prudence, but at a different level. That you don't get core funding where people say, we think you're a fabulous organization and group of people. Here's some core funding to do GBV or ending child marriage. They say, we'd really like you because you look good at our meetings, so you can fly to our meeting in New York, but actually we're not going to give you any money to do anything. So short-term, at best, programmatic money, at worst, come to our meetings money, but not core money to do what you think needs to be done. Is that accurate?
That is very accurate, Jono, and depressing.
Okay. So something else you said, I want to follow up on a bit earlier. Prudence, let me ask you, and then I'll come back to Teboho. When you go to meetings of kind of organizations or NGOs, do you get paid for your expertise?
It depends on the nature of the meeting and who is organizing the meeting. But most of the times, I just volunteer myself.
Okay, thanks. Teboho, you mentioned it earlier on. You said it was the first time I got paid to do activism. So talk us through that issue a bit more.
Thanks, John. This one is very, very touching, and because for me, it's personal. I think for the longest time as activists, we pull our weight as young people as well. We try to make sure that we stay relevant to the processes, to everything that is happening around us, to ensure that our voices are heard. But when we get to participate, for instance, let's go back to the SADC SRHR strategy process or the ESA commitment. We are expected to get there, and we are supposed to be eloquent and conversant with these issues, but there's no capacity building on that. That's the first issue. We are expected to present young people to present ourselves as professionals, let me put it that way. And being a professional is expensive if you're a young person and you've never worked a day in your life. You cannot afford a stiletto or a suit or anything. But that is the perception that we are looked at as young people. So no, we have, like, the only support that I know that we receive, especially as African members, is only the room and board, the DSA that we get. But for our expertise, spending a week, sometimes two, away from home, no, we don't, even ground transport. I think that is one of the saddest things, that you find that you are expected to travel, but what the DSA that is calculated does not take you from your home to the airport, or it's for you to get toiletries to where you're going. So that's the sad reality, I think, that we have lived on for the longest time as young people.
So unpaid youth professional work, and the dilemma for funders and grant makers is how to do that. It's not easy, because it's not easy to fund individuals. And partly, look, they're good and bad UN agencies, or good and bad people in UN agencies, but partly they're not set up to work with either civil society or individuals. And it's part of the DNA that they're not able to do that. So it's quite difficult. Let's look ahead. What kinds of support going forward? Not just money, okay? Because it's too easy to say money. I need money. But you can say that. But what kinds of support would really help you to increase your reach and your impact? Teboho, let's start with you.
Thanks, Juno. I think for me, what I would see helping me in the work that I do right now is if we can push and implement the professionalization of youth work. That way, we ensure that transition is there, and we avoid gatekeepers among young people and tokenism or tokenistic behavior from either civil society organizations. The gatekeepers are these young people. I'll make an example. I think some young people perceive me as a gatekeeper because...
Okay, don't name names.
I'll make an example of myself, because Teboho is always invited to travel, to sit in high-level meetings. We are seen as gatekeepers, when in actual fact, it's not us, it's the system. Because remember, I mentioned that issue of capacity building. Not all the young people are capacitated in order to be conversant and fluent with the issues around them. So they only a few are always identified, and those are what we call gatekeepers. That is the nicest, I think, term we could find for ourselves. So if we could try and professionalize youth work, so that we make sure that the Tebohos now move from youth activism into programming. And that way, I'm still relevant, but now I'm working with those that are coming behind me, the Prudences and the others that Prudence is producing at grassroots level. That way we ensure sustainability and the work that we do as young people. I think we've lost a lot of young people in our space, because now others had to just abandon, we were tired of volunteering. you have to find and resource yourselves and grow as an individual. And I think with the other challenge that we faced is also that from that support is like I had to put myself through school for my diploma. So through all these challenges, we still have dreams, we still have passions, and we still want to go somewhere in life and not remain as youth activists. So we need support to ensure that. Thank you.
So recognition, professionalization of youth work, reward of youth work, or remuneration, and succession planning of activists, of youth activists. Thank you. Prudence, what kind of support would help you in the next 2 or 3 years to really significantly increase your impact in the work you do?
Okay, thank you, Jonah. The biggest support that we need at the moment is a resource center or an innovation hub. Yeah, so that one that is fully equipped with books, computers, and sewing machines. So the resource center will really help us in reaching out to more girls and young women with both digital and vocational skills. And the resource center will as well boost our income generating activity so that we become more self-reliant as an organization. And we also need support in terms of mobility and communication. As an organization working at the grassroots level, most of our target areas are hard to reach. So supporting us with things like smartphones and bicycles will help ease the barrier. Hence, we won't be leaving any adolescent girl or young woman behind. Yeah.
So I mean, you've talked about a range of support, from quite simple support, like Teboho spoke about ages ago. I am going to call it today and thank you both. As you know, we can keep talking for ages. But we don't have forever on here. Thank you very much. Nemani, thank you for this opportunity to chat. We chat a lot with young people all the time in this region. It's lovely chatting with young people kind of in front of another audience. And we look forward to the interactions over the while. Thank you. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Prudence and Teboho. And Jonathan, thank you for helping us pull this segment together. And so we look forward to bringing this topic further. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Conversations With. We hope you enjoyed it. Please visit our website at africagrantmakers.org and join our mailing list. Until our next Conversations With, be well.